This is Cheryl Manley from Sharing Love of Paper. I'm so glad you could join me for another card making class today. Today I'll be making more aperture cards and demonstrating the Embossed Resist stamping technique. I'll be using papers from the Peaceful Garden 12x12 Designer Series pack, which right now is on last chance sale. I'll give just a quick look at the papers. You might recognize a couple of them. We used these two last time, and that's the reverse side of those. There are also these two, and the reverse side of those. Today I'll be using these ones, and that's the reverse side. But this is the side I'll be using for today's cards. So let me bring in what I'll be using for this first card. All the stamps and dies that I'll be using for today's class are ones that have been discontinued. If you have them in your stash, you can use those. If not, you can use something else from your stash or purchase something you like from Stampin' Up's new offerings. For this first card, I'm going to be using the Snowflake Kisses bundle. The stamps are sentiments and the dies make a variety of snowflakes. You could use the dies that come with the Dreamy Snowflakes hybrid embossing folder in place of the dies that I used. I'm also using a piece of the Peaceful Garden Glimmer paper, which is glittery, light cardstock weight. It came in 3 colors. I'm using the one that looks silver. If you don't have silver glitter paper, you could use the silver foil sheets. Then I have this piece from the Peaceful Garden. Both are cut to 4x6. I'll start by scoring my cardstock to make my card base. This is a 5.5 by 8.5 piece, and I'm going to score it at 4 1/4. I'll just use my bone folder to press the crease to form my card base. Next, I'll go ahead and do the stamping on a piece of basic white cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5.5. I'll just use the stamp that says "Let It Snow." I'll put the stamp on a block and use Secret C to stamp that on my cardstock. Now I'll just clean my stamp. Oh, my chamois gotten dried out. I'll have to soak it in some warm water next time I go off camera. Anyway, it's always good to get the tools put away immediately so they don't get lost. I'm planning to use this cutting die to cut out my stamped message, which is why I didn't stamp it too close to the corner. I want it centered in the cutting die. I'll cut that in a minute. Now for my card. I want to cut my silver piece to 4 by 5 1/4. Then the other thing I want to do, I'm going to be putting this here and then trimming this down so the silver is a mat for it. I don't like wasting all that specialty paper that would be hidden behind the patterned paper, so I'll gut the center of that first. I'll cut it at 1/2 inch all the way around. Actually, it's easier for me to see this when I'm filming if I pull this down here. So I'm not cutting it all the way across, just to the 1/2 inch mark. This is one of the things I like about the Stampin' Up paper trimmer. We can measure small amounts on either side of the cutting blade. Being able to measure it on this side makes it really easy to cut something like this. Okay, I didn't quite get it cut to the 1/2 inch mark on a couple of the corners, so I'll just bring in my scissors to trim that. So you can see I've got this piece that looks like a frame. When I put this on, you won't be able to tell the rest of it's missing. I might as well cut this while I'm at it. I'll cut it to 5 by 3 3/4. I'll set those pieces aside. Here you can see how this will look. I'll go ahead and glue these pieces on here, but I want the patterned paper to be loose in the center. I'll be cutting a snowflake out of this, making an aperture card. And in fact, I think I'll cut one there and cut one there. So I'll have 2 snowflake-shaped apertures. I'll just put glue around the outside. I'll first glue the silver to the card base. I'm just going to quickly add glue all the way around and add this piece to the card front, making sure it's centered before I press it down. Now I'll add glue to this piece. However, I'm going to use the multi-purpose liquid glue. Whenever I'm going to glue to a surface that isn't perfectly smooth, I prefer to use this glue. I know it will hold even in those conditions. I'll just add glue around the outer edge. I can add more glue later if I need to, but you'll see why I don't want it glued in the center in just a minute. So I'm going to die cut through both these layers with these 2 cutting dies. If I need to, I'll just see how it goes. I'll run it through more than once. I'll leave the card open because though I want to cut through the card front, I don't want to cut through the inside of the card. So I'll die cut this, and I'll be right back. I just want to show you this. This is the back side of the card front. I don't know how well you can see it on camera, but in person I can see there are a couple of spots that haven't quite cut all the way through. When there are extra layers, you sometimes need to run it through a second time. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, I die cut that one, just one pass through the machine. But with this one, even running through a second time didn't get it all cut. So I used a trick before running it through a third time. I used removable tape to hold these dies in place, and I just folded them back and pulled the patterned paper pieces out, then folded the dies back into place, making sure they settled properly into the cut hole in the paper. Then I sent it through again, and this time it completely cut through the card front. Now that it's completely cut, I can pull these dies off and remove the tape, and I'll just poke this piece out. So there's that piece, and there's that one. Now there's a bit of removable tape that got left on there. Let me quickly get it off. Okay, now you saw why I didn't want those pieces glued together. So I could use that trick if I needed, and so I could have those die cut pieces to use elsewhere. Now, however, I don't want the small die cut bits around my apertures separating, so I'll glue those pieces back together. I'll just pull up this little piece, put glue behind it, and press it together. I'll do a couple to show you what I mean, and then I'll take the rest off camera. Okay, I've finished gluing around these apertures. I could just leave the hole to show through to the inside of the card. That would certainly work. Or I could glue these pieces that I cut from the card front to the inside of the card, and that would look nice too. But I have this whole piece of silver glitter paper that I saved from my mat, and I'll die cut snowflakes from it. I'm also thinking that maybe I'll put this here, and the snowflake can go on top of it if need be. I'll go ahead and glue that in place right now. I'll cut these for that, and then this die cuts several little ones. I'm thinking I might mat the sentiment like that on my scrap piece. I'll just quickly glue this in place. Again, I want that multi-purpose glue so I know it will hold really well. When I come back, I'll trim that, but right now I'll go die cut some snowflake pieces and be right back. Here are my die cut pieces. I cut 2 of each of these. This one cuts 4. Cutting each piece twice gave me all the pieces I wanted to play with. One other quick trick. When I did the die cutting, I hope you can understand what I'm trying to show here, using this tiny piece as a stand-in. When I arranged the cutting dies, I made sure to leave an edge all the way around. So if I cut a piece of cardstock or patterned paper that is 1/4 inch smaller than the glitter piece, I'll have the perfect mat for it, just like I matted this piece. Now I'll just trim this so the piece is ready to go. Okay, I want to glue this right inside there. This is the trickiest part of this design. I'm going to go ahead and put tiny dots of glue on the ends of most of the little pieces that poke out so they won't get caught. I'm using a fine-tipped glue bottle here, but you could also use the multi-purpose liquid glue. Either let it partially dry before adding it or put a drop on a silicone mat and then touch the edges to it to get a tiny speck of glue on each. You don't want excess glue making a mess. I'm going to put this in here, carefully lining it up, and then pull this open and make sure everything is pressed down really well. Okay, that one's done. I'll do the next one. Add glue. Carefully put it in place. Carefully open it up. Oh, it's trying to come up. Oops, it slid. Let's try that again. I'm actually going to hold this down with the point of my scissors until I can get my fingers under there to hold it in place. And there's that. This is another form of aperture card. I'm just going to put this on here somewhere. If I put that like that, then I could sprinkle a few more of these around. I could even put these little ones like this. I know I want those, so I'll just put a glue dot centered on each side and put these in place over the glue dots. I really want something else. This extra piece isn't quite long enough. I thought I might be able to use it to make the look of a ribbon, but it's not long enough. I do have this ribbon. Usually with ribbon, I like to take it around to the back so it won't fray, but my panels are already glued down. However, this trim doesn't look like it will unravel, so I think I'll just take it like this. I can cut those right along the edge, and I think it'll work. Now I want to use tear-in tape because if you use glue with ribbon, it can soak through and make a mess. But the tear-in tape is double the width of this trim. I'll just quickly cut this a bit longer than I need. And then I'm going to put the tear-in tape on the back, lining it up along one edge. Then I'll tear it. I'll press it down really well, then peel off the backing paper. Now, I'm going to fold the extended tape back on itself so that it fits inside the ribbon. Of course, I could have cut the tear-in tape in half lengthwise, but unless I'm perfect, there would still be glue extending that would need to be folded back. Okay, now I'll glue it in place. Oops, I forgot I hadn't glued those down yet. I want this piece to be straight. Now I'll just cut it to fit, and then put this on. Oh, it's a little lower than I wanted, so I'll move it up. So now I can add that with my mini Stampin' Dimensionals, and then I can put these snowflakes back in place. What I'm trying to do is create a bit of a triangle effect with these. I'll go ahead and glue all these extra snowflakes in place, remembering that I don't have my sentiment adhered yet because I'm not adding it with glue. All right, let's bring in my mini Stampin' Dimensionals. I'll put one in each corner and then a couple in the center. Now I'll simply remove the backing papers and put this in place. Let it snow. There's my first card. Another example of an aperture card. You want to make sure there's no stray glue around those snowflakes because you don't want this to stick closed. Given the way we've done our apertures, we know if we write our message here and here, it won't show through to the front of the card. So that is card number 1, and I have these extra pieces that I can use on another card. For my second card, I'm going to be using a stamping technique called Emboss Resist. I'm also going to be making an aperture card with inside fold back. I'm starting with a piece of Secret Sea cardstock that is 5.5 by 8.5, and a piece of basic white that's the same size. My patterned paper is again 4 by 6, and then I have the rest of that basic white piece that I used for stamping the last card. I'm using the textured notes, which is rectangle dies. I'm using the Celebrate sentiment from the Wanted to Say dies, and from the Peaceful Days stamps, I'll be stamping this dove. I'll go ahead and start by scoring this piece in half like I usually do. I'll score it at 4 1/4, and there's my card base. I'll go ahead and crease that well with my bone folder. For this piece, I want to cut it down just a bit. I want to cut this to 8 inches by 5 1/4. So I trimmed 1/2 inch off the long edge and 1/4 inch off the short edge. Now I'll just score this at 4 inches and again at 2. I'll just use my bone folder to crease this well. This part will be the fold back piece. You can see that I have 1/8 inch all around the edge to make it look like a mat. I'm going to cut a piece out of the front using this die from Textured Notes. I want to cut that out of just the card front, so I'll open it up when I run it through the machine. I'll be right back. As you can see, I went ahead and die cut that piece. I had thought about embossing the card front, but that would have weakened the card base, and I didn't want to do that. What I'll do instead is to cut this patterned paper to 2.5 by 3 3/4. Since the width I want will be 3 3/4, I'll just trim this whole piece to 3 3/4. So I have this long piece if I decide I want it. Then I'll trim this to 2.5, and this piece will fit right here like this. Now this piece is 3 1/4 by 1 3/4, so I'll cut a piece of this to 1.5 by 3. I actually think I want to trim it down just a hair. You wouldn't have to, but I'll trim 1/16 off both directions. Now I'm going to cut this leftover piece. This is what, 2 inches wide? I'll cut it at 1/2 inch, and then I'll cut another one at 1/2 inch. So I have 2 pieces that are 1/2 inch wide by 3 3/4. I'm thinking I might put these here on this piece. We'll see. I'm going to go ahead and glue this piece in place. I'll actually open this up so I can see the edges more clearly. I want to get this piece fairly well centered. Next, I'll glue this piece on here. Now I'll glue this piece like this. I want to center it so that I have 1/8 inch all the way around it. Now I want to glue this in place, but glue it to just this side. So let me bring this back in and see. I think I'll want to trim them a bit shorter. First, I want to glue this just to the right side, so I'll grab my pencil and mark it so I know where to put my glue. Now I'll close this and put this in place so it's centered just right in that hole. Then I'll make sure it's secure here and that there's no stray glue behind it. So I have it like that. Now I'm going to take these pieces and I want to put them in just a bit below. I'll just eyeball where I want this cut, then cut this one to the same size. Now I can put this one here and this one here. So I'll go ahead and glue this. Before I glue the next one, I want to see if I want to have one more right there. I think I do, so I'll go ahead and cut this at a half. Then use this as my guide to cut it to the proper length. And now I'll go ahead and glue them in place. I just want a narrow border around. I want it to look similar to that, so I'll bring it up a tad. There we go. Now I'll do the same for this. So there's the basic card. Now I'll need my focal and my sentiment. I'll start with the stamping. Now let's see if I can fit this on here. It looks like I can. I'm going to use a stamp resist technique using Versamark ink. I'll get my stamp inked up really good, and then I'll stamp. Let me bring this down here so I can see it a little better. Then I'll go ahead and stamp. It's hard to see the ink, so I'll make sure I have a good stamped image by stamping a second one. You probably can't tell on camera, but I can see where that previous one was stamped. Okay, those two are stamped. Now I'll bring in a scrap piece of paper and clear embossing powder. You could use other colors, white or silver for example. I'll just sprinkle this over the stamped images. I forgot to use my stamp buddy to ensure there were no stray sticky places for the embossing powder, but I think it will be okay. The reason I use the scrap paper is so I don't waste my embossing powder. I'll bring in my heat tool and I want to make sure it's warm before I start embossing my piece. Then I'm just going to heat it. I don't know how well this clear will show on camera, but I'm just heating it until it melts. I don't want it to burn, but I do want all of it melted. In person, I can see a slight color change as I do this. I'm just looking to see that every piece got melted. Looks like the tip of that wing needs a bit more heat. And that part of the head, and the tip of that wing. I think this is done, but just to be safe, I'll come back in. And the same here. All right, there's my clear embossed image. I'm going to let that cool. It cools pretty quickly. In fact, it's already cool. I'll come in with a blending brush. I'll start with a light application of Misty Moonlight. I'll just bring this scratch paper in. I'm just brushing all over that embossed image. I think I want to make it a bit darker. I just want to get all the empty spots filled with ink. All right, now since I've got two of them, I'll do this other one with Secret C and see how that turns out. Before I do that, I want to come in here and wipe this off with a damp paper towel to remove any excess ink from the embossing. Now I'll come in with Secret C. This will create a darker version. I'll just have to see which I prefer. I'll use my stamp chamois to dampen this paper towel and I'll just get the excess ink off. I'll just bring in my card, and I like it a lot better with the Secret C. So I'll go over this one with Secret C as well, and then come in with my damp paper towel to get the ink off the embossing. The embossing resists the ink, which is why this technique is called Emboss Resist. Now I'll go ahead and fussy cut these off camera. There are my two doves. I'll bring the card back in. I was thinking that I could kind of put these facing each other. Then you'll see part of them when the card is closed, and all of them when you open the card. I'll go ahead and put glue on both so I can arrange them at the same time. Except I did a big no-no. I put glue all over this second one, and we don't want glue going beyond the rectangle. So I'll bring this piece in to protect my card. I'll just close the card and see how that looks. I think it'll be okay. Now here I need to remove any excess glue. Now I want to get my sentiment. I'm going to use this set of cutting dies to cut out the word celebrate. So I have celebrate right there. So I'm going to die cut both of them from here, and then for the mat I'll use Secret C ink. I'll go cut those out and I'll be right back. Okay, I've die cut both pieces. This die cuts out the center of the C, but I wasn't sure I wanted it cut out since none of the rest of the letters were done that way. So for now, I used temporary tape to hold the cutout piece in place. I'll get my ink and go ahead and color this with Secret C ink. There's something on here that isn't letting the ink stick. Is that glue? I'll use my glue eraser to see if I can get it off. There, that's better. I'm just bringing in ink. This is pretty dark, but it'll be fine. Let me put my ink away and clean this brush off a bit. Now I'll add glue and glue this sentiment to its shadow. Once again, I like to use tiny dots of glue to hit edges or ends that might get bent if not glued down well. I'll get this scratch paper out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. I want this centered. I'll bring in my scissors to just push it into place. I'll bring my card back in and I can put that there. I'll just glue it in place. There's one other thing I want to do. I'll bring in a black Sharpie. I prefer to use a fine line Sharpie, but I'll just use this. I just add a couple of dots for eyes. I don't like it when my birds don't have eyes. The Sharpie will be permanent on this slick surface, so that's why I used it. Now there's one more thing I want to do. I want a bit of bling. I'll just see what I can find in my stash. I've gone ahead and found a bunch of clear sequins in my stash. I've added little dots of glue where I want these, and now I'm adding my sequins. I have 4 big ones and 3 little ones for each row. I really like the Take Your Pick tool for adding small pieces like this. Now I'll just press these down. Oops, that one needs a little more glue. That's why I double-check them. Okay, there's my second card using Emboss Resist to create an aperture card with an inside fold back. There is card number 2 and here is card number 1. The 2 cards we'll make for this class. Now for the close-ups. I do hope you've enjoyed this video class. You can check the description below for links to some of the materials used in this video and a general link for shopping for Stampin' Up! Products with me as your demonstrator for those of you who live in the United States. And each month that you make a purchase with me, as long as you've chosen to be contacted, you'll receive an email of instructions for that month's class cards in PDF form as my gift to you. As always, as an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to have you choose me as demonstrator when you make purchases from Stampin' Up! I would earn a small commission on any purchases you make, but that would not affect your price. And if you click that thumbs up, leave me a comment, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so, you'll make my day. Have a great one.